So we're here to begin the final of the session. We'll speed up a little bit, which is it's interesting. It's called Remote Production Design Updates, New Trucks and New Trends. And what's interesting is the definition of the word remote production seems to be changing. So when I wrote the word remote production, I thought we're talking trucks. And then so then Mark wrote his note. He said, "Hey, so were we talking Remmy?" And I was like, "We're not really going to talk Remmy." But then I talked to Jason from my staff in the office. He's like, "Oh no, when I hear remote production, I'm thinking Remmy." So I don't even know what we're supposed to do to talk about simple remote production as a thing. It's now, I guess it means Remmy, it means at home. So with that said, Mark, because you guys are in the middle of all this stuff, so do you want to give us a quick little welcome here?
Yeah, thank you. We had the same conversation internally when I actually talked to some of the other guys. No, remote production just means OB, right? It means a mobile truck. That's how people have been terming it. Other parts of the world will say remote production means Remmy, means at home. So I think it's all those things. It's production where you have something remote, right? And you can address that, I think, with a Remmy model or an OB model or a hybrid kind of solution. So what I thought I would do, we said I'll tee up. I'm the only vendor up here, right? So I'm a little bit of the oddball. I'm really interested to hear what these guys have to say about new designs, what they're thinking. We've obviously had conversations and continue to do so. Thought I'd just, at least from a vendor perspective, what we're hearing and what are some of the investments that we're making to try to address these trends. Now we've heard the trends, and I could give a big laundry list. I forgot that Stan was going right before me, so he just laid out all the trends, right? So let me just tell you I'm going to keep it to 3 by 3 by 3, okay? I'll say 3 trends, 3 technologies that are addressing those trends, and 3 things that we're doing in Grass Valley, okay? Try to keep it simple because I can't remember more than 3 things at any one time. So in case you don't know who Grass Valley is, I actually live in Grass Valley. People don't even know that's a city anymore. But it's beautiful to live up there. But we sell solutions into live production, news, and play-out. In the live area, we have a suite of products from camera switches, replay, networking, and so forth that will get used in venues, get used in OB environments, Remmy, and across the board, quite a few range. So what we're hearing, and by the way, my responsibility is to manage the R&D resources and the marketing, kind of figuring out what to build for Grass Valley in the live space. So what we're hearing most is HDR, right? And it's no surprise. It's almost like all the panels you've had, right? So HDR is a key trend, but I would say that's more into the technologies. For us, it's 3 main use cases: hyperscale production, which is driving investment. So this is just bigger trucks, bigger productions, more cameras, more monitoring, all that. IP has been kind of part of that to enable that. Remmy certainly is a use case that we're seeing, and then just the enhanced user experience. So the technologies that kind of map into that are UHD. Now UHD doesn't just mean 4K. It's in fact, here in the U.S., it's probably less about 4K and more about HDR, wide color gamut, high speed, high frame rates. So that's definitely an area of investment for us. IP has been on the, been talking about that for years, but for this year in particular, it's 25 gig. 2110 is there, as well as the control of ISO 4, ISO 5. Those are kind of I would say, the bigger investments for us, just to make sure our portfolio supports all those. It's the Ames roadmap and that we're sponsors of. And then lastly, it's this whole virtualization area. So this is definitely an area for Remmy. And some of the motivations that we're seeing people tell us about remote production or Remmy it's about cost savings, about efficiency, but it's surprisingly, for people that have been doing it for a long time, and we have customers that have been doing it for 5 years, different versions of a Remmy model. And for them, it's, yeah, the cost is nice, the efficiency, but actually the quality is better because we're not having to scramble at the end and get maybe some people that don't have as much experience using our equipment in a remote city. We have a set of folks who are doing it day in, day out. It's a more sustainable model. They have a regular home life. And so from that perspective, they found some real advantages from the Remmy model. So what are some things that we're doing in Grass Valley? So HDR, we just heard about that. Obviously, we're investing in this area. We have something called native HDR, so we're out of the camera head directly. We're putting in, we do all the processing for the conversion to various formats in very high bit space. So when it comes out at 10 bit, it's the highest quality you can get. If you have to convert it downstream, you're going to see some artifacts coming in. But if you start with the most pristine signal coming out of the camera, then you're going to be better off. So that's definitely an area of focus. What we're doing as well that was mentioned was this idea of metadata. There's a lack of metadata, and that's true. And we are working with the various organizations to try to standardize that. So we can have metadata in the stream. We're going ahead with our own solution to put metadata in our cameras that we recognize in our production switchers and our replay systems and our networking. So we can do auto switching. So we've actually put the HDR up mapping and down mapping in our production switchers and our replay systems so that it sort of simplifies that workflow so you're not having to constantly change configurations and so forth. You can kind of read it on the fly. Now that's great for an all Grass Valley solution, which we would love everybody to have. But we realize that's not the case, so the real answer is to get a standardized version there. But for us, it's to put some of this conversion into the base products. That's going on. IP for Remmy model. IP really helps in the hyperscale trend that we talked about. I think that's what drove a lot of what some of these folks have done for IP in the trucks initially was to just handle the scale. But with our direct IP and direct IP plus out of our camera, that's for a Remmy model. It allows you to take a camera and I'll use the word virtualize, but it's to separate the camera head from the base station and put a wide area network in the middle. That's essentially what it is. So it gives you that ability to have remote cameras, bring them back either compressed or uncompressed over a network, and you can direct them over a WAN. So that's one area. 25 gig, of course, we're doing across the portfolio. We're adding IP to our replay solution, so forth. The last area, virtualization, we're looking at this. We've been doing various things. Certainly, our playout and our news solutions are virtualized. This is coming into the live area more in the context of what we're doing with the cameras, with that virtualization, but also a lot of our networking equipment is virtualized, meaning you can reflash the modular products and put new personalities on there. But we're also investing for the future, looking at more kind of data center, true virtualized solutions for some of the products that we have in live as well. So that's development going on, but not something we're bringing to market just yet. So that's my 333, and hopefully that wasn't too convoluted.
No, it's great. I think it shows the point of there's more options than ever for these guys when it comes to building trucks, and that's the beauty of it. I guess it's the beauty and the bane of it right now. So it's really kind of hard to figure out a true direction of the industry as it kind of scatters to the wind with OTT and HDR and 1080p and 4K and who's got what. And so actually, we're going to talk a little bit about truck design. And Joe, let's cue up Joe's video. Do you want to set the video up? What we're seeing here?
Well,
we're going to see.
Yeah, we're going to see. We'll show just a little video of the walkthrough of EN3, which is a truck that came out earlier in the year. So it incorporates a lot of the different design aspects we've been working on for a number of years. So it gives you a quick view of what's going on in the truck. A lot of work we've gone into has been working around design and workflow, maximizing space to move around within the units, noise and sound improvements inside, and air conditioning and airflow. So that's the A unit, that's the recording area. There's a few things that you are probably going to talk about that the video doesn't show any of those areas, unfortunately. And then moves over to the B unit. This gives you a quick idea. This B unit we built so it's somewhat modular. You can operate this unit with the side expanded or the side open. So it also incorporates the ability to put some of the Remmy equipment in there, in both trucks actually, to support various networks needs. And it's a dedicated space already wired for it. easy to get to, so it's not underneath some rack on the floor where if they do have a problem, they can't access it. And there's a couple other rooms that you couldn't see in there. It's a small room up front that can be a video area and things like that. It's kind of modular the way that the desk is designed, so we can change it from show to show. And then there's a hauler space in the back also. So it gives you a quick idea what that looks like.
Sure, sure. So in general, for all of you, what are your customers, are they asking for anything different in terms of the layout, the physical space that they're working in? Other than they want more of it, or what do they want to have better temperature control?
In general, more people space. You know, they always want more people space. You know, we're cramming more replay resources into these trucks, and you know that just generates more need for butts and seats. And so really, you know, they want to spread out. However, simultaneously, we have ESPN, for example, doing the Remmy concept. So while they asked us for a big space, suddenly they started taking graphics people out of the
right. Can you explain
out of the space?
Explain Remmy.
Remmy is graphics Remmy only. So most of the production occurs on site in a traditional fashion, but they're doing most of the graphics and some of the EVS replay back in Bristol. So they have several different versions of Remmy going on. So they're sort of asking simultaneously for lots more space for people, and then also, by the way, we're not going to be sending any more people. So it's a little confusing.
It is confusing sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So and Pete, from the mobile TV group, I mean, you guys do a lot of the dual feed trucks. So how does that impact the design, and how are you kind of looking to accommodate more people from both shows? Because in those, maybe explain that a little bit, because not everybody's familiar.
Sure, yeah. A dual feed is where we do 2 productions out of what would be traditionally an A and a B unit. But the B unit is actually what we call a VMU, which is a visitor mobile unit. And we extend all the resources from the A unit. So the switcher is, might be 7 to 9 MEs. We have a switcher panel over in the VMU, and they cut on 3 MEs. Same thing with replay. We split the replay up. Audio has its own audio console, but they share resources from the main truck. And why we went to the VMU concept was physical space. As it's been mentioned here, they want more people in the truck, more space. So it allowed them to spread out basically and extend, but still use the same resources without having a whole second truck.
Right, gotcha. So I know you have some slides too. I think if you hit
Sure.
the green button, it should go to your slides. There we go.
Okay. I was just showing, what's changed. The top one is 2002 was our layout. It's a single expando, 40-foot expando, to what we're doing today, which is a double expando, a 46-foot expando on one side, and it's about a 24-foot on the other side. We're unique in the fact that we do all of our own integration. So we're able to play with the layout a lot. But you'll see that it's basically pretty much the same. We're just putting more people in it with a little bit more space. So like audio, on the top one, there was only enough room for 1 audio person in there. The bottom, now we have room for 2. Production, there's room for more people. There's a 3rd row. Replay, there's just more seats. And kind of what's allowed us to do this is how the top middle picture is how we receive the trailer. We've taken control of pretty much every aspect of the integration process because they want to put more people in the truck, want to put more equipment in the truck, want to have as much capability as possible all in one truck. While we do have the VMUs, we do also have some clients that are less inclined to roll up a B unit, for costs. So we try to pack as much as we can in one unit. So we do the flooring, the ceiling, everything on the walls, all the interior designs us, and what we're able to do is make things like racks are not actually racks. They look like racks, but they're just a very lightweight frame. Countertops, they look like countertops, but every single spot that we've been able to drill out of there to lighten it up, we do that. So this is our main production. Again, it looks like countertops, but if you go into those racks, it's all empty, it's all cut out, because we have to stay under the 80,000 pound limit to go down the road. Another thing that we do is we choose all our own materials that are very rugged but lightweight. One thing we saw with truck and truck design, when you use a truck for 200 days a year, it takes a beating, especially if you're not in an indoor venue, you're outside all the time, tracking in snow, mud, and you've got 20 to 22 people working in the truck every day. It takes a pretty good beating. So we've gone to materials where it's more rugged, you can take the abuse. And then here's the space. One of my favorite parts of my job is we're constantly building mobile units. We build 2A units, 2B units a year, and each one get to tweak it a little bit more. We're constantly both those countertops, we'll add an inch, get rid of an inch, depending on client feedback. We can listen to them like, oh, I don't have enough room, I need more room, because we try to use every single inch of this trailer. And it's just our audio room. It's hard to take a picture in here but you can see the other, there's a person behind there that can be sitting in there. And video shading, we have enough room for 3 video shaders comfortably in there. But what you don't see in these pictures is we've gone through all the walls. They're as thin as possible just to get that extra 1/4 inch. And it's amazing to see these. I wish I could take a picture of it when it's all closed up just to see how it all goes together. And we have 1/4 inch clearances everywhere. So, we've started to take interior 360 pictures, walkthroughs of our trucks. So you can go to the link or go to our website and you can do a whole walkthrough of everything. So.
Gotcha. Excellent, great. So I mean, they look similar to your trucks too. I mean, they all look very similar in the grand scheme. What do you see? Do you see anything kind of different from the way you guys approach things at NEP?
Well, I mean, we're very similar that we have, NEP is always, since day one, we have our own mechanical design, system design. We do all our integration, we always have. We have a whole shop that we do metal fabrication, welding, all the interior parts. And we always have used lightweight materials, aluminums, composites, various things like that to, and again, it's that art of fine-tuning every little bit that you can to try to improve on workflows. I have a big fat console that's taking up too much space or whatever is, just a waste of space for everybody, and you're hauling around weight that doesn't benefit anyone. So it's
And I guess we're sort of unique in the world. We're still doing all of the furniture integration at Girling. Paul Boner does all of the heavy lifting on figuring out what to do over there. And we're like these guys. We're always looking for new materials and new ways to integrate the truck that makes it lighter and lets us put more stuff and people in there. But it's the same story.
Because unfortunately, the manufacturers have not made the equipment that much lighter, that much, less power consuming,
IP.
cooler.
Fewer cables, IP. We
Yeah,
took some weight out there.
Well, I would disagree, actually. They're making it lighter, but our clients just want more of it.
more of it. Yeah, we just
more,
fill it
more
up,
of
right?
it. But with the IP, it's all the high-pitched squeal of the fans now that we have to deal with. The sound has been a big challenge for us.
Actually, that's one of the things as we've been doing these IP integrations, finding a way to mitigate the sound volume in the engineering spaces, because our engineers and really everyone who's operating in the truck are living in an engineering space, and finding a way to partition that off has been a real challenge, especially with some of these larger routers and the COTS switches, that are now 34 inches deep, trying to find a place to bury them.
Well, one of the interesting things I've heard from touring your trucks the last couple of years is the air conditioning situation, because as it becomes an equipment room that runs pretty hot, you have to become innovative as far as how you cool it without adding a ton of you'll save some weight on the cables, and then you got to lose all that weight to put in air conditioning. So how do you kind of deal with and then making the truck too cold, right? So people walk in, they can't work.
Too cold truck is good. We like that.
It's a tough environment, though. You figure the average building, you wouldn't have people working in the data center.
Right.
They would go out in an office or in a proper room. That's not the case with how mobile units you have. They're not going to take extra trucks just for something to do. I know for the last, I guess, 6 or 7 years, everything's had a engine room for that core electronics the real noisy stuff that you're talking about, because it was painful. Once, I think the last one we did, where we didn't have it set up that way and the engineers were still working in that area, it was tough, you know, and then you're trying to mitigate all that noise after the fact, and it gave us a run for our money. We model all that stuff in Inventor, and we also, a couple years ago, bought a CFD program for it, so we have one guy that models airflow, so we can try as hard as we can to have it be reasonably comfortable in the people spaces, but have the proper amount of air in each area. And I know truck manufacturers inherently just kind of always did it the same way, and that just didn't work anymore, because in some of these big routers and the big IP systems especially, there's massive amounts of airflow required in a fairly small area, and now you have to, it's a challenge to get that correct.
Yeah, and I would say, as we're, you know, it was a challenge certainly for the big trucks with the big routers, but now what we're kind of focusing on is bringing IP to, you know, more of the commodity, you know, the regional sports trucks perhaps, and trying to figure out how to, you know, achieve some of the same partitioning in the smaller spaces. So, you know, bury those things they're still loud and still big, and put them in a place where, you know, our engineers can still, and the rest of the staff who's on a show can tolerate being in the same place with them.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, we're down to probably all the heat generating loud equipment. It's down to five or six racks now. So how do you take that part of the truck and partition it from everybody else? Because, you know, the rest of the truck, there's nothing that's generating noise or heat. It's just monitors in front of them with user stations. So you ask how we do it, trial and error. We're you know, really paying attention to it, trying not to, like in the past it's been, well, just flood the truck with cold air, and, you know, the equipment is the priority, the people are second.
Right.
But we're slowly getting to figure out ways to partition that.
See, I think we got past the trial and error part because I got fed up with it. I couldn't handle it anymore. And it's hard to fix it after the fact, which I'm sure we've all experienced more than once. So that's what part of drove that modeling program was. Trying to fix problems that were already out there was difficult, and you'd fix one area and cause 3 other problems. But now we've actually gotten ahead of the curve. So EN3 was the first one we fully modeled the airflow in the system, so we knew that the IP switch, you know, required X number of cubic feet a minute of airflow or whatever, and we could sort of accommodate that, and it helped quite a bit. So it took a lot of the, I mean, we were pretty happy with the results day one when we turned it on. Now, another thing in trucks that's hard, and, you know, you almost need the clients and the people that are using it to help out, is you have to pick some design of how it's going to be configured. So if you have walls and doors dividing rooms, at some point, they either have to be shut or not, and that's how you have to sort of tailor the airflow. So it gets hard as you have people that want to operate, you know, somebody wants to leave all the doors open, or somebody decides to prop the, you know, the recording door to outside open. It's those kind of things, you know, you're gonna lose some of the benefit that you work so hard to get to.
Right, right. But so when you look at things like the Remmy, which means less people there, and then you look at the interest in the Remmy, which means less people there, one would think that at some point someone's going to come to you and say, we just need a 30-foot truck or a 25-foot truck. You remember about a decade ago, people were talking about maybe this opportunity for a 15-foot truck for these smaller shows. But the shows don't seem to get smaller, and so it's like the Olympics. You know, people say, oh, we have to keep more people at home, and then they keep some of the engineering people home, but they replace them with more production people and more, you know, talent and on-air people to do more tangible stuff that you can, when you see the results because they're there, whereas an engineering person at the Olympics doesn't really help the on-air product necessarily. So are these trucks going to get smaller ever, or are they always going to have more people at these big shows? And there's more EVS operators and...
I mean, it's hard to say. I'm sure at some point they may, but we tried a number of years back to do some scaled back, slightly smaller trucks, and it really didn't go over that well, because if it wasn't working on that, even the show it was designed for, it seemed like 3 months after they were out, then everybody wanted to get back to where every other truck was, so they wanted it bigger. So I'm not so sure that's really works out that well in the U.S. market. I don't know, maybe it will.
Well, I'll say a couple things. At least for the Remmy, first of all, we're reconfiguring a bunch of our B units to accommodate Remmy, so that's kind of how we're addressing that. We're not building newer, smaller trucks exactly. We're just
Making the B units more flexible. And
exactly. We're putting more horsepower into the B unit so they can really deal with that. And to Joe's point, you know, we built a couple of smaller trucks, and they've actually served those markets really well. But we didn't build any more of them. Gemini and Discovery we built, you know, as sort of cut down Game Creek infrastructure trucks. And they've been well received and they work well, but the third time we did it, we actually just built, you know, one of our normal size trucks. You know, same space, and they're more versatile in our fleet.
I guess part of the
But I think
problem.
part of it is, yeah, it's just when it's not being used on that show, that's what we ran into. Then you just needed, you were back to where you started.
Well, I guess the problem is that size-wise, at the end of the day, you're looking to make the truck as attractive to as many clients as possible. So you're better off making it bigger and then having space be unused rather than making it smaller and having clients say, well, that's too small, I can't use it. And then
I think what we sort of concluded was the difference in the investment of infrastructure to support, you know, the larger show was pretty small. You know, where the cost really is in the peripherals. So cameras, EVSs, and all that stuff. So if you just, you know, build out the infrastructure to support it and not buy it, you know, the delta is pretty small actually.
Yeah, I think I think we see it as the trucks aren't going to get any smaller, and like we have the same problem where, you know, there's not enough demand, right, to remote everything right now, so you can't really justify building a smaller truck. So I think, you know, what we're seeing is we're going to still have that A unit on site, you know, because we still have all the stuff that we need to, you know, we need to feed the venue, we need to feed the league, you need that infrastructure still on site. But then you can start remoting people. You know, let's say they want more people on the show, and they want 8 replay operators. We don't have room for them in the truck. We'll remote them to somewhere else, anywhere, right? And I think that's where you know, our version of at home comes in, where we no longer need the people on site, but the equipment still needs to be on site, still needs to have the same amount of capabilities, and when it's not doing like an at-home production, it needs to be able to accommodate a certain amount of people.
right.
We're building our second dedicated remote production vehicle now. Rolls out in about 2 weeks, but it's still a full size. Now, it doesn't have the infrastructure of a production truck, so it doesn't have an actual control room. It is wired for a switcher, but it's still a 53-foot trailer, expandable truck, but it has a pretty large engineering area in it. You figure, because now we're setting it up so you can, you know, you have all the encoding gear that has to come in. And again, do you want it all hidden in the floor someplace? Or I'm sure when you're setting up your B units, you're at least making some accessible places for it. But you can do this in any of our trucks, but it may be not quite as convenient to access or whatever. That's where either the B units or I don't know how many dedicated of these Remmy trucks will be warranted, but right now it's still a fairly large unit, it's just laid out different. By the time you haul the gear around, it's got to go to the site, cable and everything. This one's going to support some racing events, amongst other things. So it's a lot of infrastructure you take with you just to, you know, once the truck arrives.
Right. So Mark, you're trying to create products that obviously these guys will want to use. The market's kind of, again, there's some Remmy stuff. There's potential for hubs to be built tied to the truck. So how do you kind of look at your product design as far as, and even the size of things like the production switchers and some of the gear?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, these are my customers, and I'm listening very intently, make sure we're aligned with what they need. And so, you know, I think with some of the trends that are happening, you know, if you have a control panel, you know, everybody's going to need a production control panel, whether it's sitting in the truck or sitting in a studio somewhere connected. So that doesn't change necessarily, other than just enabling high-speed connection between and very robust between the control panel and the frame. We're always looking at how can we make that frame smaller, lighter. You know, there's some physics involved, obviously, but they're, you know, as the power goes down on these chips, we're able to increase our power, you know, or make them smaller and reduce the the airflow and hence the, all the things that they've been talking about. So we're trying to, stay ahead, always looking at what's available from a technology perspective to enable some of these desires and requirements. But I think we have to design things in a way that they can be used together or they can be used remote, and it's kind of the same product. It's the same product solution, just configured in a different way. So, I agree. The majority of applications today are in traditional trucks. I think that the Remmy trend is growing, but I don't see a future where we won't have trucks. There's always going to be trucks, and there's going to be a hybrid solution probably where maybe it's the B units and so forth. But that's the trends we're starting to see in other parts of the world as well. Maybe it's taking off a little bit more than here, just given the economics that we discussed earlier today.
Right. Well, obviously the Andrews, the production hub down in Australia, is a perfect example of a successful deployment of a hub mentality. I mean, I know Scott last year at our IP session we were talking about the hubs, and Scott Rothenberg was talking about why they are unattractive here in the U.S. and why there are issues with the hubs. I don't know if anyone wants to discuss the challenge there of the freelance community.
I think the real problem, it's actually pretty simple. I mean, we don't have consensus in the industry on how that gets done. We're all in the business of servicing multiple clients, and I think the magic of the Andrews Hub is it's a captive audience. They have one client, and they service themselves, and they've figured it out, right?
Right, that makes it work.
So, I have to build a truck that services ESPN and CBS and NBC. If I build a Remmy truck, or convert a B unit into a Remmy truck, basically what we're doing there is turning it into a capture facility, and then the client brings the connectivity. So until we have some consensus on what the connectivity looks like, and I can take a connectivity package and deploy it across my entire fleet, and it works properly for all of our clients, we're not going to be able to pull that off.
Right.
That's problem number one. And then I think adding to that is connectivity at venues and figuring all that stuff out.
I think that's where we've seen the successes when the service provider owns the telco, or they own the bandwidth. In Spain, we see with Media Pro, they have very, very high-speed connections to essentially all the venues. Spain has a pretty good infrastructure from fiber, and so they're able to get that kind of bandwidth back to a central location at a very economic price. So it makes sense for them to do that. We've seen it in the Netherlands. We've seen it in the Nordics for all those same reasons, but in the U.S., it's a more dynamic, challenging problem. I think we'll eventually get there, and there is the element of freelancers, right? If you have a hub, if you're in France and everybody lives in Paris, and you can put a hub there, but we have freelancers that live in Montana and Nevada and who knows where, because they're designed just to fly into the event, and I think that'll take some time to migrate if we do end up with these hubs, and maybe it's less of a. I know other use models is, rather than building hubs, actually just make the technology so you can kind of control it from anywhere, your bedroom.
Right, yes.
To the extreme, right? So then there is no travel, and you bring the network to them, and they have a control panel, and we'll see if that works. But
Sure, and we see that as, the producer director can be anywhere, even though they want to be on site. We know that there'll be a day that maybe they're not, and and we're also being asked to maintain a lot of flexibility, right? Because, there's 1080p, 1080p HDR, UHD, you throw some super slow motion in there. We're still maintaining our 720p or 1080i shows. So, all our trucks and our truck designs are all built around flexibility. And, another thing that we're adding to the mix is how can we remote the replay operator and the TD and the A1 and all that. So it's a fun and interesting time, but it is a challenge.
Right.
Well, the equipment choices too. I mean, they're very broad in the U.S. and clients, request certain equipment. If you could use a solution all from one vendor, it might make that easier. But then that means, are we all going to have that same? I doubt it. Probably not in the near future. where that's very different in the, like you say, the Nordic region or in the, Australia or whatever. So that makes I don't know how you would do it with some of that, having different record, replay devices, the number of channels. There'd be a lot of changes depending on which mobile unit showed up from any of our companies that they're going to remote back. It might not be quite that flexible or easy to get to on a real quick turnaround.
Right, right. Are you guys comfortable with the current weight limitations here in the U.S. on trucks? Is 80,000 pounds? Is that what it is?
It is 80,000 pounds.
Is that enough pounds, or do you need more pounds?
No, or you
No,
can
no. Will allow us to take more,
either that or make the trailer smaller. See, I figure that the European end of the deal has a better gig because they have to have shorter trailers and they can have more weight. So we would take that limitation.
Yes.
Now the problem is that costs somebody more money because now you're going to be building more trucks to get the same amount of equipment moved around because you just need that people space. But it definitely changes the way certain things you have to do. I mean, that even goes way back to, say, air conditioning and things like that. To be able to zone systems ways more, you could probably do a nicer job, but can't afford to wait. So it's more weight would be good,
Right, right.
but it's probably not going to change. So
Exactly. So in general, when you look at the marketplace and you got the IP, the move to IP, so is SDI, as that becomes less of a concern, I mean, will that fundamentally change the way the trucks are designed? Can you take the data center and put it outside of the truck and then kind of wheel it behind in a little, little cabin and kind of?
I don't know if we'll get to that, but the big move for us this year, we're putting together our first truck. It'll come out in May. That doesn't need to be IP. The motivation, we're going to make it IP, but it doesn't have to be. This is kind of, going to your data center comment there. Yeah, we're putting a data center on wheels, just like we have before. One of our big challenges is we still have to support all the legacy equipment that we have in the fleet. We still have to support the EVSs and all the CCUs that are SDI. So we're going to be building out a parallel accommodation for both IP edge devices and the traditional SDI stuff. So it's not going anywhere, but that's the next big challenge for us.
Yeah, we're currently building our first IP truck full, as end-to-end as possible. So we're trying to connect switcher, replay, cameras, audio, all native IP without doing conversion. And that's hard. That's going to be really challenging, but that's what makes this business fun. So.
yeah, the challenges are still there for doing an all IP system and not having the same amount of gateways and things. Maybe they're not back to SDI, but in the replay world and all that, that's still without functional, what you call it, like ISO 4, ISO, NMOS capabilities and the ability for control systems to actually control this gear and fairly real-time retune receivers for the correct multicast address and things like that. We're kind of not there yet with how you reconfigure a recording device or whatever to be different channels, different channel counts from one day to another.
Right.
Now it's going to have a high-speed camera. Tomorrow it's not. It's a lot of reconfiguration that requires something in the middle today, and SDI still basically solves that problem. I mean, we're doing the same thing. We're going down the road for an all IP unit, but there's definitely challenges in there.
Right. Great, excellent.